We're going to continue here in the Tafsir of the Quran. We're still in the second juz, ayah 224 of Surat Al-Baqarah. The author says, starting with the word of God, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم ولا تجعلوا الله عرضة لأيمانكم أن تبروا وتتقوا وتصلحوا بين الناس. And do not make swearing by Allah to not do some good an impediment in your swears from you believers doing good. Don't swear to not do the good. And do not make swearing by Allah to not do some good an impediment in your swears from you believers doing good. Doing good and fearing God and rectifying between the people. Rectifying between the people, that means to help people fix their situation. That's good deed. Needs sincere intention. Cannot be your intention to know the people's business, to be in the business of the people. Wallahu sami'un alim. And Allah is hearer of your swears, knower of your intentions. لا يؤاخذكم الله باللغو في أيمانكم. Allah does not punish you for what is frivolous of your swears. So what's the swear here? Swear means when you say, for example, Wallahi, I will, or Wallahi, I won't. This is a type of contract that you do with yourself to bind yourself to do something or not do something. If you swear to do something or not do something, then either you do what you swore to do, or you can break your swear, but then you would have to fulfill an expiation. So don't swear to avoid doing something good. And لا يؤاخذكم الله باللغو في أيمانكم. Allah does not punish you for what is frivolous of your swears. This means it's not held against you if you habitually swear without the intention of binding yourself to do something or not do it. Like someone does to be emphatic. So he says, Wallahi, I will. Wallahi, I won't. Not with the intention of binding himself. لا يؤاخذكم الله باللغو في أيمانكم. Allah does not punish you for what is frivolous of your swears. It means this is not held against you. It's not haram for you to do it, and if you didn't intend to bind yourself, then it's not binding. ولكن يؤاخذكم بما كسبت قلوبكم. Rather, he punishes you for what sins your hearts have acquired. ولكن يؤاخذكم بما كسبت قلوبكم. Rather, he punishes you for what sins your hearts have acquired. He punishes you for what sins your hearts have acquired. I don't have some details here directly from the Tafsir, but you know that there are sins of the heart. You learned that in the book of obligatory knowledge. Wallahu ghafurun halim. And Allah is forgiving. Halim, not swiftly punishing. للذين يؤلون من نسائهم تربص 4 أشهر For those who vow abstention from their wives is a grace period of 4 months. Those who swear to not have sexual intercourse with their wives is a grace period of 4 months. فَإِن فَاءُوا فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ غَفُورٌ رَحِيمٌ. Then, if they retract by having intercourse, that means if they break their swear, then surely Allah is forgiving of their swearing to punish the woman this way. And He is merciful by sanctioning the redemption for breaking the swear. Yani, this is the case of a man who swears to not have sexual intercourse with his wife. If he breaks his swear, for those who vow abstention from their wives is a grace period of 4 months. Then if they retract, that means if they break their swear within that grace period by having intercourse, then surely فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ غَفُورٌ, then surely Allah is forgiving of their swearing to punish the woman this way. Rahim, merciful by sanctioning the redemption for breaking the swear. Merciful by sanctioning the redemption for breaking the swear. Yani, Allah is merciful by making it permissible for you to break your swear. It's not haram, but you would have to fulfill an expiation. وَإِنْ عَزَمُوا الطَّلَاقَ فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ سَمِيعٌ عَلِيمٌ. And if they have decided on divorce, then surely Allah is hearer of their sayings and swears, knower of their decision. If they decided on the talaq, divorce, which is the undoing of the marriage contract. وَالْمُطَلَّقَاتُ يَتَرَبَّصْنَ بِأَنفُسِهِنَّ ثَلَاثَةَ قُرُوءٍ. And the divorced, free, menstruating women whose marriage has been consummated and they are not pregnant, they must maintain themselves in waiting for 3 shifts. وَالْمُطَلَّقَاتُ يَتَرَبَّصْنَ بِأَنفُسِهِنَّ ثَلَاثَةَ قُرُوءٍ. The divorced women, so al-mutallaqat, the divorced women, yani, by itself is saying, and the divorced women must maintain themselves in waiting for 3 shifts. So what's all of this that we added in here? The divorced free women, not the slave women. Slave women, their iddah is different. When we talk about iddah, that means out of a marriage. Slave woman might be married and then divorced. So, really quick here too. What's the case of a slave woman? Case of a slave woman is, if she's not married, then she's lawful for her master. If she's married, then she's only lawful for her husband. So she's married, and then she got divorced. She has different iddah. So we're talking about here a free woman. Menstruating also. Why? Because if she doesn't menstruate, like if she reached menopause, or like she never menstruated in her life, then her iddah is different from what's here in this ayah. Something else. So slave woman's iddah is something else different from what's here in this ayah. But she might be divorced, but she's not in this ayah. And a woman who doesn't menstruate also is not in this ayah. And her marriage has been consummated. That's necessary, because if her marriage was never consummated, she doesn't have an iddah. If a woman got married and her marriage was not consummated, never, yani, and then she was divorced, she has no iddah. So then she's not in this ayah either. and not pregnant, because the pregnant women, their iddah is until they deliver. So this is the divorced, free, menstruating women whose marriage has been consummated and they are not pregnant. يَتَرَبَّصْنَ بِأَنفُسِهِنَّ ثَلَاثَةَ قُرُوءٍ. They must maintain themselves in waiting for 3 shifts. ثَلَاثَةَ قُرُوءٍ. 3 shifts. The scholars differed what these 3 shifts are. Are they 3 menstrual cycles, or are they 3 non-bleeding intervals? These 2 sayings that I just told you, that's the consensus of the nation of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. This ayah here, ثلاثة قُرُوء, 3 shifts. The consensus of the nation of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam is that this is either 3 menstrual cycles or 3 non-bleeding intervals. What's the difference? The difference is going to determine when her iddah ends. Does her iddah end when her period goes off? Or does her iddah end when her period comes on? So if you say it's 3 non-bleeding intervals, that's the shifts here that she has to wait, then it means he divorced her in her first non-bleeding interval. So that's 1 right there. Then her period came on. Then it went off. So now she's in her second non-bleeding interval. Then her period came on. Then it went off. Now she's in her third non-bleeding interval. That's the 3rd shift right there. So then her period comes on. What does that mean? Her iddah's over. So if you say it the other way, if her iddah is 3 menstrual cycles, then that means she'll have her first menstrual cycle. That's first one, then goes off. Then second one comes. Then goes off. Then the third one comes. Then when it goes off, her iddah's over. So all of the madhabs go this way or that way. Shafi'i school is that it's non-bleeding intervals. Subhanallah, I need to review the chapter on swearing. And subhanallah, Allah didn't will for me to review that. It would have been appropriate for today's lesson. So Allah knows best. Maybe inshallah, if I review, I'll bring it back for you. وَلَا يَحِلُّ لَهُنَّ أَن يَكْتُمْنَ مَا خَلَقَ اللَّهُ فِي أَرْحَامِهِنَّ. And it is not lawful for them, when wanting to hurry a divorce, to conceal what Allah has created in their wombs, whether a child or menses. إِن كُنَّ يُؤْمِنَّ بِاللَّهِ وَالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ. If they believe in Allah and the last day. Yani, the woman would hide the child in her belly for fear that if he knows that she's pregnant, that he would delay divorcing her. And she wants him to hurry up and divorce her. So it's not permissible for her to hide the fact that she's pregnant from him so that he can hurry up and divorce her. Or, yani, maybe he will never divorce her if he knew that she's pregnant. So she can't hide that from him. And she would hide the menses and say while she's menstruating, I became pure, so that he would hurry up and pronounce the divorce. وَلَا يَحِلُّ لَهُنَّ أَن يَكْتُمْنَ مَا خَلَقَ اللَّهُ فِي أَرْحَامِهِنَّ. And it is not lawful for them to conceal what Allah has created in their wombs. إِن كُنَّ يُؤْمِنَّ بِاللَّهِ وَالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ. If they believe in Allah and the last day. وَبُعُولَتُهُنَّ أَحَقُّ بِرَدِّهِنَّ فِي ذَلِكَ إِنْ أَرَادُوا إِصْلَاحًا. and their husbands are more deserving of reinstating them in the marriage, even if they refuse during that waiting period, if they wish for reconciliation, not for harming the woman. Meaning, Allah Ta'ala gave the man 3 divorces and 2 returns, a free man, not a slave man. 3 divorces and 2 returns. So if he divorced his wife once and their marriage was consummated, then she starts her iddah. If he brings her back before her iddah passes, then he spent 1 divorce and 1 return. The return is like if he says, I return my wife to the marriage, or I return Fulana to the marriage, without needing witnesses. So then if he does it again, if he divorced her another time, that's the 2nd divorce. Same thing. So if he brings her back before her iddah is done, that's the 2nd return. He doesn't have any more returns. So all he has is 1 more divorce left. And Allah gave this to the man to deter him from divorce. So if he divorced her a 3rd time, now he can't bring her back. And there's no way for him to get back with her unless 5 things happen. She finishes her iddah from him. She marries another man. She consummates the marriage with that man. That's a condition. She gets divorced from that man, and then she finishes her iddah from him. 5 things. Now they can marry again with 3 divorces. And for your information, if he divorced her once and her iddah passed, now he can't bring her back. So what can he do? He can marry her again. So he does a new marriage contract with her. He still only has now 2 divorces. If he divorced her twice and her iddah passed, now he can't bring her back, but he can marry her again. So if he marries her again, then they would have only 1 divorce left. وَبُعُولَتُهُنَّ أَحَقُّ بِرَدِّهِنَّ فِي ذَلِكَ إِنْ أَرَادُوا إِصْلَاحًا. And their husbands are more deserving of reinstating them during that waiting period, if they wish for reconciliation. Yani, that's the right of the man, even if she doesn't want him to. And he should not do that to harm her. وَلَهُنَّ مِثْلُ الَّذِي عَلَيْهِنَّ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ. And they have rights over their husbands, just as there are rights over them in compliance with the sacred law and the norms of the people. They have rights over their husbands, like for their husbands to provide for them shelter and clothing and food and some other things. All of that according to details. Remember that the wife is the only dependent of a man who gets a very specific amount. All of the man's other dependents don't deserve a specific amount of clothing or food. He can just give them what they need. But the wife, she gets specific amounts. That's her right. So if she has to provide for herself and she didn't pardon him, then what she spends on herself becomes a debt on him. If she had to provide for herself and she did not pardon him, then what she spends on herself becomes a debt on him. And that's not true of others like the children. That's not the case of the children. That means if he didn't spend on his children, does not become a debt on him. That's the judgment of Allah Ta'ala. That's the religious judgment. Doesn't become a debt on him owed to the child. Only the wife. This is only for the wife, not even the child. وَلَهُنَّ مِثْلُ الَّذِي عَلَيْهِنَّ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ. And they have rights over their husbands, just as there are rights over them in compliance with the sacred law and the norms of the people. Now, this part, the norms of the people, I don't have any explanation for that. That's according to the Tafsir of An-Nasafi. Unless that's in reference to the obligation of a rich man versus a middle class man versus a poor man. The rich man is obligated to provide for his wife like the rich people. And the middle class has to provide for his wife like the middle class people. And the poor person has to provide for his wife like the poor people, concerning the lodging, the clothing, and the food. And you should know that the man's wealth, whether he's rich or middle class or poor. So, first of all, rich means he has enough money for the rest of his life. Poor means he doesn't have enough money for that day. He doesn't have enough for his daily expenses. And middle class is in between. The status starts at Fajr time. So you could be poor one day and you could be rich the next day. You could become poor or rich in the middle of the day. As a husband, this doesn't come into effect until Fajr time. So if you're poor at Fajr time, then you're poor that day. If you're rich at Fajr time, you're rich that day. وَلِلرِّجَالِ عَلَيْهِنَّ دَرَجَةٌ. And for the men over them is an authority and an advantage. The men have over them, over the women, an authority and an advantage for paying a dowry and spousal support. Nah. SubhanAllah, this is a very important matter here. Because if you try to disrupt this, it's going to cause great harm to the society. And it's easy to see that in places where people would rebel against what this ayah says. وَلِلرِّجَالِ عَلَيْهِنَّ دَرَجَةٌ. And for the men over them, over the women, is an authority and an advantage. A daraja, the men have over them a daraja, a level over the women. That doesn't mean he's better religiously. You know, what makes a person better is if he's more God-fearing. So everything needs to be put in its proper place. And you need to also be able to not see things only about yourself, but you need to be able to see a big picture too for all the people. So maybe a person have something in their self. So because of that, they would see something like this. وَلِلرِّجَالِ عَلَيْهِنَّ دَرَجَةٌ. The men have a level over them, over the women. Because, you need to think well. Men and women. Look at the relationship between the mother and the son. Who has greatest right over a man? Who has greatest right over a man is his mother. So this type of statement, you take what's in the Quran. This guidance is in the Quran. Put your own preferences to the side. This religion is called Islam. Islam means submission. Do you have an opinion? Why? Why you have an opinion? There's a religious judgment. Before you had an opinion, did you check? Did you check for a religious judgment before you even formed an opinion? Big problem there. Wallahu azizun hakim. And Allah is undefeated, invincible. There is no objection to him. Wise, only commanding what is good and right. At-talaqu marratan. The divorce after which one may return his wife is not more than twice. At-talaqu marratan. The divorce is twice. The divorce after which one may return his wife is not more than twice. Not more than. فَإِمْسَاكٌ بِمَعْرُوفٍ أَوْ تَسْرِيحٌ بِإِحْسَانٍ. Then there must either be a retention of the wife with civility or a release with kindness. فَإِمْسَاكٌ بِمَعْرُوفٍ. Then there must either be a retention, imsak, holding, like when you're fasting. فَإِمْسَاكٌ بِمَعْرُوفٍ, then there must either be a retention of the wife, keeping her with civility, بِمَعْرُوفٍ, أَوْ تَسْرِيحٌ بِإِحْسَانٍ, or a release with kindness, under good terms. And here, someone came to the Messenger of Allah, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and he said, the two divorces are stated here in the Quran. الطلاق مرتان. The divorce is twice. Where's the third? So the Prophet recited for him. فَإِمْسَاكٌ بِمَعْرُوفٍ أَوْ تَسْرِيحٌ بِإِحْسَانٍ. Right there. Then either hold her or let her go. That's the third divorce right there. وَلَا يَحِلُّ لَكُمْ أَن تَأْخُذُوا مِمَّا آتَيْتُمُوهُنَّ شَيْئًا إلا أن يخافا ألا يقيما حدود الله. And it is not lawful for you husbands to take anything from what dowry you have given them, unless both fear that they will not observe the limits set by Allah. فَإِنْ خِفْتُمْ أَلَّا يُقِيمَا حُدُودَ اللَّهِ فَلَا جُنَاحَ عَلَيْهِمَا فِيمَا افْتَدَتْ بِهِ. Then, if you fear that they will not observe the limits set by Allah, there is no sin on either of them concerning whatever khula' payment by which she ransoms herself. فَإِنْ خِفْتُمْ أَلَّا يُقِيمَا حُدُودَ اللَّهِ فَلَا جُنَاحَ عَلَيْهِمَا فِيمَا افْتَدَتْ بِهِ. Then, if you fear that they will not observe the limits set by Allah, there is no sin on either of them concerning whatever khula' payment by which she ransoms herself. Yani, if you fear that it won't work, then there's no sin in conducting a khula', which is when she gives him a payment to release her from the marriage. تِلْكَ حُدُودُ اللَّهِ فَلَا تَعْتَدُوهَا. Those limits pertaining to swearing, marriage, divorce, khula', and vowing abstinence from the wife are the limits set by Allah. So do not exceed them. So it's interesting. That's according to Nasafi. تِلْكَ حُدُودُ اللَّهِ فَلَا تَعْتَدُوهَا. Those are the limits set by Allah, so do not exceed them. Do not go beyond them. What are those? Those limits. Which ones? The very last ones we were talking about, the khula? Not just that. Pertaining to swearing and marriage and divorce and khula and vowing abstinence from the wife. Didn't the Quran address all of these? So did you notice how the Quran has a lot of knowledge in it? MashaAllah. Many, many things. Quran addressed many, many, many things. With few words too. We covered all of that in this short time. وَمَنْ يَتَعَدَّ حُدُودَ اللَّهِ فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الظَّالِمُونَ. And whoever exceeds the limits set by Allah, then they are the unjust. And by the way, we saw also previously how the something is mentioned in the ayah like that, this, some pointing noun or pronoun, and included would be many things, many verses above. It's not the first time the likes of this has passed. So you want to take notice of patterns. فَإِن طَلَّقَهَا فَلَا تَحِلُّ لَهُ مِن بَعْدُ حَتَّى تَنكِحَ زَوْجًا غَيْرَهُ. Then, If he divorces her a third time, she is not lawful for him afterwards until she marries a husband other than him. So what appears from this ayah is that the woman has control of this contract because it says حتى تنكح زوجا غيره, until she marries. تنكح, she's the one who's doing the nikah until she marries a husband other than him. So this is evidence for the Hanafis that the woman can give herself in marriage. And they have other ayahs that they use also. فإن طلقها فلا جناح عليهما أن يتراجعا. Then, if the second husband divorces her after consummation, there is no sin on either the first husband or the woman if they return to each other by a new marriage after her iddah passes. So what's that? That's what we were just talking about. He divorced her 3 times. So if he divorced her 3 times, فإن طلقها فلا جناح عليهما أن يتراجعا. Then if the second husband divorces her after consummation, there is no sin on either the first husband or the woman if they return to each other by a new marriage after her iddah passes. إن ظنا أن يقيما حدود الله. If they suppose that concerning the rights of matrimony, they can observe the limits set by Allah. If they thought that they could fulfill each other's rights. وَتِلْكَ حُدُودُ اللَّهِ. And those are the limits set by Allah. يُبَيِّنُهَا لِقَوْمٍ يَعْلَمُونَ. He clarifies them for a folk who know, a folk who reflect and understand what is clarified for them. You have any questions so far? Maybe we should stop here.
No questions, Sheikh.
سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.